So let's set some expectation. This video is not a tutorial and it will not make you an expert on Adonis. This video is an introduction on the framework. So AdonisJS is a Node.js framework with baked-in support for TypeScript and bunch of other features. To get started, we need to go to our CLI and run npm init AdonisJS app. This command will scaffold a new application and we give a folder name blog. At this time, it asks me if I want to create an API server or a web application, and I'm going to choose a web application here. It's going to be named blogged, and I want ESLint. Now I can cd into the blog and run Node.js serve with the watch option. This command will compile the code and run the server. So if we go to the browser now, here, and type localhost, and it worked. So let's see how this view has been rendered by Adonis. If we open the file explorer, you can see that there is a bunch of folders. It can seem intimidating if you're coming from other framework, because we provide a default architecture for your application. So we're not going to go over each folder, but we're going to see how this view has been rendered. So we are going to start on the start folder in the roots file, and here you can see that we define a root on/render welcome. This tells Adonis to render the view welcome when it hits the root slash, so the default route. If we're going to resources, views, and then welcome, we see exactly the same thing. So now if I change it works by hello world and press save, when I hit refresh here, it should change. And it does. So this is how you render directly a view from the root file. But you may want to add side effects to your route. You may want to fetch things from the database. And this is what we're going to do in this video. So we're going to create a simple blog to show you how it works. So first thing, we need to access the database. And to access the database, we need the database models. So let's use the CLI tool and run npm I AdonisJS/lucid at alpha. Great, now we need to invoke the configuration by calling the Node.js invoke AdonisJS lucid. This will scaffold a bunch of configuration files, ask us what driver we want to use, and we're going to use Postgres and install everything for us. So the last thing we need to do is go to the end file and change through configuration. So I have a Docker running in the background, and to connect to it, I need to use root, and the DB name is called blog. I'm going to save, and that's it. So next step is to create a model called post. Why? Because a model is a JavaScript object to interact with your database. So let's use Node.js make model. Let's call it post, and with C and M, it's going to create migration and controller at the same time. So let's open the migration to database, migration, and this one. So migration is a step to change your database. In this case, we're going to create a table named post with few fields inside. So increments, so I need to auto increment ID, some timestamps, and I want to add two fields, table, string, and it will be title. Then I have another, and it's text, and it's the content of the post. And for the moment, I believe that's enough. Now, if I want to run the migration to change the database, I need to use Node.js migration run. So if I'm going first to my database here and refresh, you can see I have no tables on the left. Let me run the migration. And if I'm coming back here and refresh, we see that we have Adonis schema and post. And if I open post, I have nothing, but I have the fields I've defined on the migration. Great. So now let's see what's the model. So let's go to app, model, post. As said before, a model is a way to map to a database table. So here it maps to the post table, and you can see that I have already ID, created that, updated that. So now I need to add two more columns, which is what we added before. So it's the title and it's the type of string. And the other one is the text, which is content, type of string too. Good. So last thing that has been created is a controller. So let's go to controller here and post controller. A controller is a way to group up few methods for one or more routes. So here we are using the post controller and we have few routes created for us: index, create, store, show, edit, update, destroy. Those are called the CRUD route. So it's meant to display the post, create a post, delete a post, etc. But how can we access a controller? So let's go back to our root file. Here, again, we're saying on slash, we want to render welcome view. But now we don't want to render any view right now. We want to go to a controller and the controller will tell us what we want to do. So let's delete that and use route get slash, and then at the second argument, I can say post controller dot the method I want, which is index. Great. So if I'm going back to the controller now, here in the index method, I want to return something and I'm going to return hello world. If I refresh my browser, I should see hello world and yes. So now we went to the root files, defined that the route slash go to post controller index, and in the index method of the controller, we return something, and we can return anything here. We can return JSON, and if we refresh, we have JSON. Great. So now what we want to return here on the index call is the post, all the posts. So to do that, we're going to use the post model we created just before. And with tab, I'm auto importing it at the top. And with this model, I can call the all method on it. So this is going to fetch all the posts from the database from me. And I'm going to store it on the variable called post, going to await this call. And for the moment, I'm going simply to return posts. So if I refresh, I have an empty array. And this is normal because we have no post on the database. So let's add some posts. And to do that, we're going to use factories. Factories is part of the Lucid model. It helps us to create fixed data easily for one model. So we're going to define a new factory for the motel post, and with tab it auto import it at the top. And then we're going to define the schema of what we want. So we use faker here, and what we're going to return is a payload of what we want to save. So we want the title, and the title we'll use faker with the lorem things, and we want to add a sentence as the title. Then we want to set the content, and the content we're going to use lorem again and text. Great. And we need to call build here to build the factory. So let's export that, and we're going to name it post factory. There is many ways to use factory, but for the sake of simplicity, we're going to use a route. So let's go back to our root file and let's create a new route that I'm going to call /create-post. And here I'm going to inline handler. So let's use insync, and here we go. So this function I'm going to call the post factory we just created. So post factory tab. It's auto imported here, and to call create many, and I'm going to say free, and I'm going to await that too. So if we go back to the browser and go to /create-post, and now we go back to the root, we should see 3 posts created. And yes, it worked. So if we check now the database and refresh, we see that we have 3 posts with title, content, and automatic timestamps. Great. So let's delete that. Since we use the factory, it's fine. We can work with 3 posts. And now we want to display a view instead of plain JSON. So if we go back to our view here, and we're going to delete everything. I'm going to call the HTML5 scaffolding things. Here we go. And now in the body, I want to have a section. So let's use @ section and I'm going to call it page. Great. I'm going to rename this view also. It's going to be app. Great. And I'm going to create a new folder called post, and inside it I'm going to call it index.h. So on this file I'm going to call @layout app. This tells this file need to use the other file we created, app, here. And now I'm going to fulfill this section using the same tag. So go to index here. I'm going to say add section, and it was named page. And I'm going to end the section using end section. Good. So now how to render this view. So if I'm going to post controller, instead of returning all the posts here, I'm going to return a view. So the view is accessible via the context here, but it's passed as an argument. So ctx dot, and here I have the view, and I'm going to render a view, so called render. And now I need to pass the path. So it's inside post / index. If I'm saving here and refreshing, we should see an empty page. So if I'm going back here to the index and set something like hello world here, hello world, and refresh, we see hello world. If I'm going to my layout here and say something like home, and it's going to be a link, so link to / and it's home, and hit refresh, we can see we have a link. Great. So now we need to pass all the posts to our view. Remember here, we are fetching all the posts. So to pass it to the view, it's the second argument. So here I'm going to pass an object, and it's post. So on my view here, index, I can call each post in post and have access to all the posts. So end each now. And here I'm going to have, let's say, a UL. And here we have li, and I'm going to display the post title. So if we refresh, we should see all post title here. Great. So let's use a link now here, and we're going to display the post. So the link will point to a new route, and for that we're going to use the route helper. So route, and now we can define in the controller which route we want to fetch. So it's post controller.show, and here I'm going to pass the ID, which is the post ID. So this seems magic for you, so let me help you there. If we're going to a route file, I'm going to define a new route. It will be /post ID. This tells Adonis that we have a route with /post /something, and this something will be saved as ID in our request. So now I'm going to map this route to the post controller show method. If I'm refreshing, everything worked. In fact, if I'm removing this route and refresh, you can see that we have an error saying that it cannot find the route that map to this method. So let's add it back, refresh, and we're good. So if I click any of those links, I should see nothing, because remember, in our post controller, we have nothing in the show method. So let's add a simple return statement with hello again. And if I'm clicking here, I see hello, so I'm correctly here. As said before, in the CTX params, we can have access to the ID we passed. So if I'm saving that, I should see free if I'm refreshing, because I have post /free. And if I hit refresh, we see free. And here I can put whatever I want. I will have it here. Great. So we want to fetch the post with the ID free. And how to do that? So with Lucid again, I'm going to use post, and here we can say find, and that's it. I'm going to pass the params inside and call it day. So let's post, await that, and if I'm returning the post directly here and refreshing, we can see we have the post. So if I'm going to post 2, we have the post 2, post 1, etc. Great. So now let's create a view to display it. So let's go again to post here, file, and it's going to be called show.h. in this file, again, we're going to use the layout, so app, and I'm going to extend with the section called page. Great. So from here, I want h1, which will be the title, so post title, and I want then the body directly, so post.content, and let's have it all of this inside the article tag. Great, so in our controller now, I can simply call ctx.view.render, and it's the view post/show, and here I'm going to pass the posts. So let's refresh, and we see the post. So if I'm going home, error, here we go, home, here we go. So it works well. Now let's say we want to add maybe comments to our posts. So we need a new resources called comments. So let's use the CLI here and call Node.js make model, and we call it comment. And we want also the controller and the migration. Great. So let's go to the comments migration. And now we are going to have here a string, which is the comment directly. You can call it body. And I'm going to add now a relationship to a post. So it's going to be an integer, which is post ID, and it's unsigned. Oops, and it's unsigned. Here we go. So now this migration will create a new table called comments with ID, timestamps, a string body, and integer post ID. Let's run the migration. Node.js migration run. And if we're going here, refresh, we see that we have the comments. Great. So now let's go to the model. And inside the model, I'm going to define the new column. So add column. And here it's the body, which is a string. And the other one is another column. It's public, and it's called post ID number. Notice that here I'm using camel case, while in the table it's snake case. This is something Adonis do for you. So the convention is that inside your tables it should be all snake cased, but in JavaScript we're using camel case, right? So we are doing the conversion for you. Great. There's one more thing I should add inside this model and inside the post model. For the moment, there's nothing that creates relation between them. There is no way to tell that this comment is for this post. There's this column, but it's stupid. It's like a map. All right, so I'm going to go to the post model, and here I'm going to say that this post has many comments. So I'm going to use @has many, and here I'm going to pass a callback that return the comment. And we're going to save it inside the public things called comments. All right, that has the type has many, type of, and comment. So what this does, this tells Adonis that this model, so the model post, has many comments. All right, and I'm saving it to the comments property. I can do the same thing on the post. So a post belongs to a model. So I'm going to use @belongs to, and here same things, callback, returning the post, and it has one post. So public post, and not posts, because it has only one, and it's the type belongs to, type of, post. Great. So if I'm going to my controller now, and not this one, the command controller. So the first thing we want to do here is to fetch the post that we want to create a comment for. So I'm going to save it inside the post variable, and I'm going to await this call. So post dot find, and we can use find or fail here. And I want to fetch with the param post ID. And you know what? Before continuing here, let's create the route. So inside the route, I'm going to use the post method here since it's a formula, and it's going to be post ID / comments. And this is going to go to the comments controller .store method. Here we go. So going back here, I'm fetching the post, and now here I can say post.related, and here I have all my relations, so comments, and with that relation I want to create something, and here I need to pass the payload. So first I'm going to say body, and the body will be hello world. All right, and we're going to return a response, so ctx.response.redirect, and we're going to redirect back. All right, so if we open our first here post, which is post number 3, if I use /comments to create a new comments, but remember in our root file here we define the post method, so I need to swap it to get for the moment just to show you this. If I'm going there and hit enter, it should redirect me to this view, and a comment should be created. Good. And if I'm going here to table plus and press refresh on the comment table, I can see that I have a comment for the post 3. Great. So now let's create a formula here. So let's swap that back to post, and let's go to our show method here. And at the bottom, I want a HR and I want a formula. So it's form. The action will go to route, and it's comments.store, comments controller.store, and I want to pass the post ID, which is post ID. And yeah, here we go. So the method here will be post, and we simply want now a field. So input, field type text, the name will be body, and that's it. I want maybe a button, which is the type of submit button. Here we go, and send. So if we go back to our controller now, here I want to get the body here. So to do that, I'm going to use the ctx again, request, and here we have multiple fields like only, input, and in fact I'm going to use input body. So let's get back to this. Here in the show view, I have rendered a formula, so let's go there again. Here we go. In this formula, I'm mapping to this method, which is this. All right. Here I'm fetching the post. I'm saving a comment for this post, and I'm going in fact to await that, and I'm redirecting back here. Great. We're saving a comment with something from the request, which is the input body, and the input body is defined here, name body. All right. So if I'm going here and say hello and click send, it redirects me here, and if I'm going back to my table here, I have a new comment called hello. Now the issue here that we haven't validated anything, so I can click send directly, and it created an empty comment, right? And we don't want that. So if we're going back to the controller here, we can validate the request. So let's do that. Here we can use a new concept that we call data, and here we're going to use ctx.request.validate, and here I'm going to pass the schema of our request. So schema, and here schema.create, and notice that this schema here is imported from the validator. All right, so inside the schema we have a body, and the body is the type of string, and I need to await that. Great. So now I can remove all of this and say data. So this will in fact get all inputs I sent to the route and check for the validation. So body need to be a string, and it will remove anything else I don't want inside the request. So if I click send now, I'm redirecting back to this route, and if I refresh, we see no comments has been saved. Great. But we may want to display any error we have. So let's go back to our view here, and let's add here at the top we're going to use the inspect method edge providers, and we're going to display all flash messages. So if I'm pressing send again, we can see here that we have an error, great, saying body is required. Great. And if I provide something here and click send, we have nothing, and the message has been saved. Good. So now let's display all the comments. So let's go to our post controller again. Here we go, to the show methods. And now let's say I want to also display all the comments. So here I can call, instead of find, the query builder directly. And I can add preload, and I want to preload comments. This means it will preload all comments for the post I want. And here I'm going to say where ID is equal to the ID, and I want the first one, and I'm going to use, in fact, first or fail. Great. If I'm refreshing, you see nothing difference, but in fact I'm fetching the comments also. So let's go to the show view again, and here let's use the UL and use at each comment in post comments. Here we go, and each. So now a new li, and in the li on the comment body. And if I'm pushing refresh, we see all the comment here. So I'm going to add hola and click send, and the comment has been added. Here I'm going to say Roman and click send, and the comment has been added. So we saw in this video how to make relation, how view works, how controller works, and a bit how Adonis work. Everything I show you is built in inside Adonis, and you can see in a few minutes you can create a full website.